Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this workshop, Impact Measurement That Matters. Now, every charity wants to make a difference. I know each and every one of you in this room really want to make a difference, but how do you truly know that you are succeeding in making the difference, in making the impact? So today's session, we hope, will uncover and unpack what impact really means, how to measure it practically, how to tell your story with confidence, without burning out yourself, without burning out your team, and getting lost in all those spreadsheets and Word documents and everything that you have to handle on a daily basis. So I am joined with three awesome panelists. Now, can I invite Tann, CEO of Majurity Trust, Sheila, Pakir, founder of Kaye Consulting, but most importantly, the board director at Credit Counselling Singapore, and James Tann, CEO of Touch Community Services. Now, allow me to get onto stage, and I don't trip. Oh, does everyone have? So I think you all know what the pigeonhole is going to be doing, and you know what to do with the pigeonhole. Send your questions through, and I'll do my very best to answer them, or not me, ask them to our panelists, and they will answer it. So, the moderator. I've been out of this sector for too long. Ayo. Okay, so before we dive into this discussion, I want a quick show of hands, thank you. And don't be shy, it's a safe space. How many of you here in this room is already measuring impact of at least one program in your charity? Show of hands. Not too bad. Now, the tough question, huh? How many of you would say you're still figuring out or have not started? And don't be shy about it. Still trying to figure out how to report this impact, how to take that data and translate it to impact. Show of hands? Okay, we've got quite a few. So let's begin. And thank you very much for sharing, because if you can actually answer that to yourself, and you're in the right workshop. Okay, we are here to tell you what impact is all about. So let's start. Now, I'm going to start because it's so nice to see women on the panel, because we saw a couple of men throughout the day, and I'm so glad I have an amazing woman on my panel. So, so I'm going to start with Sheila. What exactly is impact measurement in the context of charities, and why is it so important?
Regana, you know very well that we agreed that you would let them answer all the questions first, and I was supposed to go last.
It's not black and white, sorry.
Women supporting women. But it's just that there's, these two gentlemen have such a wealth of experience, and I think they'll be able to speak a lot more to a lot of the philosophies of impact measurement. For me, where I come from is, so as Regana mentioned, I serve on the board of Credit Counselling Singapore. And the reason I'm on the board is because my practice in my professional life is on communication, not PR and marketing or branding, but leadership communication, organizational communication, connecting with people on a human-to-human level. And I think that's a really, really important part of impact measurement, although I am biased when it comes to it. To me, I think impact measurement is about creating trust. And at the end of the day, good leadership communication is about communicating trust, or creating trust through communication. And to me, that's where it becomes very, very important. All of us here, every charity, every social service in the room, trust is the most important currency. In fact, I wouldn't on which you can engage your public, your donors, and your stakeholders, your constituents, the people that you serve. Why do people come to you for help? Why are people willing to give you their money to help others? Ultimately, you know you're making a good difference in your communities, but people have to take it on trust that you are indeed doing good things with these people and with their money. Impact communication is one way of being transparent with the people that you serve and also the people who support your organization, and that is the most important thing to creating that trust. So to me, That's one. And the other good thing I think about impact measurement is that it's a way for you to keep your own organization fit, right? It's a way for you to get feedback about what you're doing. It's a way for you to be critical almost about what you're doing in order to make sure that the services you're delivering actually are having the impact in the community you want them to have. And at the end of the day, I'm going to do a raising hands one as well. How many people here feel thrilled when you talk about impact measurement?
Whoa.
Excellent. How many people here feel a little bit of dread or, oh no, when people want to talk about impact measurement? If you don't want to raise your hand, you can just give me a wink. No one else will know. That's it, right? At the end of the day, sometimes impact measurement can feel like a drag. It can feel like another task in the million-strong task list you already have that you need to do, a box you need to check off. And I'm hoping that actually we can convince you that even if it can feel tedious sometimes, it is perhaps one of the most powerful ways you have to make sure that you are achieving the difference that you want to make in your part of society. And that is why you are doing what you do, right? Otherwise, everyone here would be an investment banker. So I hope we can change your mind on that for those of you whose minds need to be changed.
No work-life balance if investment banker. Huh? Okay, so I'm actually going to go with James first. Now, Sheila spoke about trust. It's a fit check. It's a kind of channel for feedback, and sometimes it can be a drag. But James, not all programs, and I'm sure at Touch, not all of your programs were designed with a measurable impact. And I'm sure some of the charities here, you guys are running programs that not every program can measure impact. Should they still measure every single program that they have? And what happens if they don't? Or what happens at Touch if you don't?
So for us, when we started the journey of impact measurement in 2017, the whole idea around it was to ask ourselves one question. Does what we do really make a difference, make a change, right, based on the resources that was allocated to us? And so that's our starting point. Right? It wasn't about funders. It wasn't about trying to satisfy the government, but it's trying to satisfy ourselves. And therefore, we need to measure the changes that we want to see in the program. So that's the first starting point. And we did that because we want to make sure that what we do is relevant, is really meeting the needs. We want to make sure that we can make informed decisions as management of the company, right? Whether to pour more resources inside, and most importantly, there's accountability, right? To different stakeholders, whether is it through the staff, the board members, and even to funders in time to come, right? And today, as we went on this journey, 7 years, now it's about 7 or 8 years, we also saw that many funders or donors, family offices coming into this space, they are a lot more informed. They are not just satisfied with your storytelling, although that's very important. They are not satisfied with just you sharing a few testimonies, you bring back, they put on an annual report. They want to know, right, and quantify based on the sums that they are giving us, whether it's really making a change. So our journey was such. And today, 8 years from then, we look back and we say, yeah, it was the right move, but we couldn't possibly measure everything, because when we first started, or when I first came on board, and we started to put impact and research in place, many of our programs lack the pre-assessment, so we don't have data, like many of us, okay? So we are on the same journey. But along the way, we start to bring about changes. And it took 3-4 years, I'll tell you that, right? So yes, you need to measure. If you don't have, it's quite common, right? Because most charities didn't start that way. But you should really make, or rather call upon yourself and the team to at least start the journey of learning and hopefully over time adoption. I think I'll stop here for now.
Thank you, James. I think all of them are here to learn. So we speak about funders. Money man. Hello.
James has more money than me.
Okay, so from a funder's perspective, Martin, when you ask a charity, what's the impact of this program? What do you really want to know? What do you really want to know?
at the base of it, what is impact for us? Actually, it's not just for us. I think it's the same for everyone else. It's actually really quite simple, right? Are things better? That's at the end of the day. That's the basic question we want to answer, right? Are things better? Are people's lives better? Is society better? Are organizations better, right? Sometimes you can run a program that shows a lot of attendance, but people's lives are not necessarily better. You know, and we're all in the sector, we've seen programs and we run programs that, you know, it seemingly looks good on paper, like, wow, you know, 2,000 people have come. Then we realize that actually all these are converted on, you know, they come because they believe in it. Then we realize that actually the people who need to hear that particular message don't come because they don't have the time to come, they are gig workers and so on and so forth. So if we don't start asking, like, are people's lives better? Are organizations become better? Then if we take one step back, then why do we want to do what we do, right? We are in a sector, so you mentioned, like, you know, don't become an investment banker because got no work-life balance. Trust me, this room of people got no work-life balance. So in the charity sector, even worse. At least they got money. Right? Anyway, so... correct, huh?
Money from you.
I'm in the legal sector now, which is worse.
That one, yeah. That one we cannot fight. No, but the reality is that none of us are in this for the money, right? So we're in this for impact. So if our goal is really the purpose of making things better, making lives better, then surely we want to know whether we have achieved our goals or we have sort of achieved it. The problem is, sometimes from a funding point of view, from a funder's point of view, we are seen from, if I don't meet that goal, then I get punished, right? My grant get cut, you know, I get accountable and so. Yes, there is a certain level of that, but my hope is that we don't see impact measurement from a punitive lens, right? If we see impact measurement as a learning lens, as an empowerment lens, then we can ask the question, if things are better, why is it better? And we ask that question because then we can replicate what is good. If things are not better, why is it not better? Then the learning allows us not to repeat the same mistake. Now, if we use the lens of learning and look at impact measurement, then all of a sudden, it's really in all our interest to want impact measurement because it allows us to drill down to why things work, why things don't work, and allow us to say, you know what, from a funder's point of view, for every dollar we're donating out and giving as grants, is it achieving the goals that we all set out to be, right? So one litmus, and with this I'll end my side, one litmus that I tell my team is, do our grantee partners, we call them grantee partners, so do our grantee partners come to us with their problems? I'm not sure about you, I've been in the sector now for 25 years, so I don't have the habit of telling my donor got problem because I'm scared. Well, I tell you, then later you cut my funding, you know. Worse still, you withhold the next tranche, xiao liao. So my challenge to my team is, if we want to be the funders we wish we had, that's sort of my frame for Majority Trust, then surely one of our own impact measurement is, do charities or grantee partners come to us when they face problem? Because if they do, then I know I have done my job as a funder, that I'm journeying with them and learning along the way, right? If we run impact measurement on a punitive measure, then they will never come. But if we run impact measurement on a co-learning basis, then we're trying to figure things out along the way. Then we can learn, then the sector becomes better. So that's sort of from us as a funder. These are why we are wanting to make sure there's some level of impact measurement that helps us make decisions along the way, help the sector grow, help the sector learn, and hopefully for us as a community, we have enough resources to help each other out.
So we have a couple of questions, which I'm actually going to start asking our panelists. And I think the first one, I think maybe James, I would actually ask this of you. Someone wrote, to do proper measurement, we need to collect and process data, which is the main problem for most of us. How should one begin the journey of designing the data architecture infrastructure, maybe from your perspective as a charity of Touch? Just let us know what was your journey and any tips for...
Yeah, maybe I'll share our journey, how we got started, because there's a lot of data to collect. So when we decided as leadership team to go on the learning journey, and I want to emphasize that because we didn't start because we had to answer to funders. We start because we owe it to ourselves my team of people, the social workers, the therapists, they really want to know whether all the time and resources spent is really making a huge difference, right? Sustained change. So we took everyone, all the managers, over the course of 3 years, we ran this whole framework on theory of change and logic model, and you can find that in the MVPC Tote Board impact measurement framework online. You can actually download, very comprehensive. So we went on that journey, right, and we encouraged many of the team leaders and managers to bring their program to this workshop that we ran together with NUS. And along the way, well, I'll tell you that when we made the call for them to sign up, there was only 1 or 2 departments, actually 2, that actually signed up. The rest sat on the fence, right? So I didn't have everyone's buy-in, right? But we were very determined to start somewhere. And at the end of the day, when you run through the theory of change logic model, you will use that framework to decide the kind of data you want, because the data that you want is also dependent on the kind of changes you want to see, right? So it's all tied in. You don't want to end up over-collecting data, because what's the point if it can't contribute to your decision-making, right? So we start, in a sense, on I would say, an easy kind of pace, because my whole idea around it is to get adoption and buy-in, not kill the interest. Right? So we may start with, maybe in terms of outcome, we have a few indicators. Like I said, I start easy because I want buy-in from the whole organization. Right? We started that and we collected the data. We knew what we want to do with the data to inform whether we are making the right calls, whether the program is working. And over time, obviously, funders get to hear about it, people like Majurity, Trust, and so forth. Then they started to take an interest. We had a platform to share, and then funds start to come in. And subsequently, the rest of the departments who didn't come in at first decided, hey, maybe we should give it a try. Right? So it was a journey that took 3 years. We had 25 different services across Touch. So you imagine when I started, it was not even 10% that signed up. But today, I would tell you, after 3 years since we started in 2017, literally every department is on it. We speak the same language, and it makes it easier when we look at, down the road, social health integration. Right? Because the problems today are a lot more complex, and you require actually different departments, different players to come together and work towards a more integrated solution.
Thank you. So I'll take another question for this segment, and I'll read it word to word. Question to Martin. How do you consider what do you consider as good impact measure when you evaluate a grant request?
Wow. Because this is recorded, so they are trying to trap me. Then they're going to use this and say, hey, but you say this. Short answer, and this is not a cop-out, right? It's really not a cop-out. Short answer is that there isn't a single metric that we look at as the main litmus, because every program is different, every target is different. What we do look for intentionally is we look at what is your theory of change. That to us is far more important than what data you collect. And I think to James' point, I think he's alluding to it. Impact measurement starts with a very sound theory of change. Once you have a clear theory of change, the measurements will come. Because then you know if this is the change, then what am I looking for, right? So I give you a few examples. One metric that we used to use a lot is something called impact of future wage earning. Does this program contribute to impact of future wage earning, right? So we have a financial model draw out. We sort of know if you are a PSLE graduate, over the next 20 years, how much you will earn if you stay as a PSLE graduate, an O-level graduate, A-level graduate, a university graduate, and so on and so forth. So you can work out a financial model with inflation build out. So we know that if a program help a kid move from, say, PSLE to O-levels, a higher chance of O-levels, we know the delta difference between an O-level graduate over a 20-year time frame versus a PSLE graduate over a 20-year time frame. And the difference between the two is your impact. Does it make sense? That's called the impact of future wage earning. Now, if you are working on an elderly program, you are not going to use this measure. Does it make sense? right? So I'm so glad you all say yes so loudly. Thank you. I really appreciate. That means that there is no one size metric and measure that we look at until we understand what your theory of change is. And then we agree on the fact that this is the best metric for your program, and then let's agree on that. So the goal, and I think the essence of the question is, what do funders look for? The most important thing is clarity of what is the change you are after, not what we are after. Right? Now, again, I don't speak on behalf of all funders. I fundraise as well, right? Every dollar we give out to the grantee partners, I have to raise that money. We have no akong. Government don't fund me. I don't have a single family office. So I work with 590 donors. 590 donors, 55 of my donors give me 95% of my funds. So every dollar we give out as grants to the charity on the ground, I have to raise every single dollar, including my operating costs, right? So I'm in the same boat as you, because I need to fundraise in order that I can aggregate the funds together and then channel to the ground. It's the same thing. I work with my funders and I tell them, this is my theory of change for this fund. These are the measurements that I'm asking the charities to look at. So the same conversation I have with funders, the same as a funder now I am with the charity. What is it that you want at the end of the day? What can we agree on? There's a fund currently that look at achievement gaps that we have. And Touch is one of the partners that we have. An internal, let me let you in on some of the internal conversation, right? Our goal is to help the bottom 20% of Singapore children level up from as simple as normal technical to normal academic. Simply that, right? In the old PSLE system, it's basically 20 point, an old PSLE system, right? Before that, on a 3-digit system, on average, national mean is about 207 on PSLE. Now the system changed. I use the old frame, but 207. Bottom 20%, the national mean is 164. All right? So that means that bottom 20% purely by income bracket will always be normal technical, then on a social mobility, they'll continue to be vocation and so on. But if I can raise them by 20%, that means 20 points, they can go to normal academic. If they go to normal academic, then they have the ability to go to poly and whole rows and the impact of future wage, and it makes sense. Now, it's a very long way to answer the question. So what are we looking for? We're trying to look on a percentile increase, right? That means that a lot of the children education program who cannot show us that the number will actually potentially increase over the next 3-5 years, we cannot look at it. Because I'm very clear, this particular fund is looking at achievement gap. Does that make sense? But I've got another fund that looks at children in another way, or look at education in another way. So what is important is that as you look at funders, not all funders are the same. Not all funds within the funders are the same. What is it that you and your change that you're looking for? Then you find the right funder who believes in what you are wanting, and then you co-create together. Don't change your theory of change to suit a funder. Is it helpful? Because there's too many funders out there with very different priorities. You will change. After a while, you don't know what you have. But if you're very clear about your theory of change, and that's what we look for as funders, what do you want to change? Then how can we as a funder? Often or not, we tell charities, we are not the best funder for you. And I'll be very honest, I don't want to waste people's time. All right? But the next time when I got another fund that actually suit you, I'll call you back and say, hey, I found money already. Actually, what you are doing is going to be quite useful. Why don't we have a chat? That's what we're trying to do, and that's probably my best way to not skirt the issue, but to have you at least understand why we think what we think.
Regana, can I just jump in on that? So we work with many foundations, and we are thankful, of course, for Majurity for the latest tranche of the children work. But a couple of matrices you can look at, but essentially we always look at the end in mind. What do we see in the person that we're trying to serve? What's the end point for him or her, or for the child? And there are a couple of things I can maybe just say very broadly across a number of my programs. We look at whether the person has picked up skills to be able to help or cope with the issues that he or she is facing. Second, whether the person is able to apply it daily life, right? And third, our whole intent is to measure whether the person can come out of the program at some point in time. Because the whole idea is not to keep the person in an aquarium, it's to put the person back to the natural habitat. And of course, the bonus is whether he or she, having received help, could come back and volunteer or contribute. So a couple of matrices that we use across a number of our programs that you could weigh in, and I think in general in our dealing with many of the funders, some of these matrices sit pretty well with them. Thank you.
Thank you. We will get to your questions, but next we're going to look at making it work, right? The big question, who measures the impact, when to measure, and how? So I'm going to start with Sheila, actually. Who in the organization or in a charity should own impact measurement? Who do you think? And how can that person or that department or that charity avoid impact measurement being seen as an admin job or a, compliance? Yeah. Oh, I know it's a tough question. She's shaking her head at me already. Hey, I will ask both of you also.
We buck up beforehand. I get the easy questions and I answer last. What is happening?
This is easy. I got tougher ones for these two men.
Okay, it's coming for you. Wow, who in the organization should own impact measurement? These two gentlemen will have a lot more practical experience over a larger range of organizations. But my suspicion is, in order to avoid making it seem like a chore, it cannot actually just be owned by one part of the organization. Because when it becomes one part of the organization's job, it is then nobody else's job. And that part of the organization then becomes the people who send out the emails being like, oh, I need these stats, I need this data, I need to put into a report. And it's their job, and nobody really relishes replying to those messages. And it also becomes very perfunctory, right? It becomes a box to check off. And yes, it can be done that way. You can absolutely produce an impact measurement report with that kind of system in place, but it will feel like a chore to your organization. You may not get the best quality of data, and in the end, it will not be a philosophy that infuses your organization, right? Because so much of what we've been hearing, right, from these two gentlemen so far, and also from you, is that actually impact measurement is a philosophy. It's almost a way of life. It's a way to keep your organizations good. And if we really believe in that, and it's not just a means to an end. It is sometimes a means to an end, but it's also an end in itself. That culture of wanting to measure your impact, that culture of genuinely being curious about what is happening with the families or the people that you're working with, that has to infuse your entire organization. So again, I hope this is not a cop-out response, because I genuinely believe it. I think impact measurement has to be owned by everyone in the organization. Everyone must see its value, and everyone must be willing to contribute towards it. I think something that will be important for making your impact measurement processes robust in the organization is a very close link between the people at headquarters and on the ground. That nexus between kind of your, the stuff that happens in the meetings in the boardrooms and the stuff that's happening on a daily basis on the ground, the tighter you can make that, the closer the feedback loop, the more regularly those people interact with each other, and the more they speak each other's language, which is very, very important, the more effective your impact measurement will be. Very often I find you could have people on the ground who actually know what the problems are, and those never trickle up to the ones writing the reports sitting in the office, because the ones sitting in the office don't understand that when they read the reports from the ground, sometimes the language being used by those on the ground is not the language that makes that report writer sit up and pay attention. Right. In a previous life when I was in government, I spent a couple of years at what was then called the Pioneer Generation Office. It's now called the Silver Generation Office, and it was basically a team that was put together to corral hundreds of thousands of volunteers at one point to, across the country, engage elderly people and their families in their homes, to go to them in their homes and engage them very deeply on their healthcare needs and help them on a very personal level navigate the healthcare system. And we discovered that the really important nexus is being able to take a lot of the feedback about the problems you're seeing on the ground, operational issues, right? Something as simple as you have a disability assistance scheme, you need a doctor to certify that someone is indeed qualifying for this scheme based on the number of daily activities that they can do. But this person finds it especially hard to go and see a doctor because they have those disabilities, right? So as a result, many people who qualify for this scheme are not able to apply for it because they cannot get the doctor to certify it. That's a real case where we noticed that in our engagements, and we brought that back to the ministry. And so then they created a program of door-to-door doctors who you just have to give them a call, they'll come down to your flat, to wherever you live, and they will certify and handle the paperwork for you. And so that's an example of how creating that tight nexus between the people sitting in the so-called policy roles or the report writing roles, the kind of people who put together the reports, and the people actually doing the work on the ground and making sure they speak the same language is really, really important.
Thank you. You want to...
Oh, I just would add on, I agree with what Sheila is saying. I'll just add one thing, that a lot also depends on the size of the organization. So if you're a large organization at Touch, for example, then you'll probably have a measurement or a research or impact team that actually will hold that responsibility to a certain extent. But if you're a startup, we have only a 2-man team, 3-man team, then honestly, everybody's responsibility, like, I know the boss will be the one who needs the numbers to sell. Then if he doesn't have someone who actually do the Excel, then the boss will have to do the Excel, right? So I guess it's really important to think of it from a right size mentality, that don't... Because sometimes we attend conferences, right? We kind of say, oh, this is the best practice. Then we go back, we don't take into consideration the resource that we have or the size of the organization. And then especially board members, we go back, wow, we came from this charity council, they say they must do this. But then you only got 4% in your team. Then after a while, you're going to kill everybody for something that is actually not right size for your organization, right? So I guess it's important for us, I think across board, to just remember some of this can grow. And we can right-size it, and I think funders have to learn this as well. Sometimes when we demand impact measurement, if we don't right-size the demand and expectation, then we're setting people up for failure.
So that's a very good lead-up. Thank you very much. I have a question, which I think, James, I'm going to actually work it into my question. Someone's asking, how can they make it a culture across all the departments on measuring impact of their program, so that it's not perceived as an extra role, I'm doing this and now you want me to report. So I'm going to ask you, you lead a large team, multiple programs at Touch. How do you manage that? And how do you not burn out your teams? You burn out your staff, just by measuring it all the time.
So like I mentioned just now, we started this as a learning journey, right? I wanted my staff to feel how this impact model could help them better crystallize what they're doing and how the programs are achieving some success or even not meeting some of the issues that we're trying to solve, right? So we start off that way. It was quite a slower pace. As I mentioned, there's only like 2 departments out of the 25 departments or services. But I was just happy even with 2 or 3 departments, because the whole intent is to let people taste some level of success. So if you start with that kind of expectation where you don't over-collect data, don't put so many indicators such that you kill anyone, right? Just look at a couple of key ones. And I think when you go to the funders, let's say if you're going to pitch for a proposal, I think they would understand where you are at your journey. When they hear your presentation, they kind of know. And many funders, I feel they are sympathetic, they want to see things work, and they will be able to right-size their funding as well. So to make things manageable, don't try to measure 10, 12 indicators. Right? It's a bit too much. Right? Work with 3 or 4 key ones, and then over time you build from there. But let your staff who perhaps narrow down these indicators, let them taste some success first. Because with success comes confidence, and then you find that a lot of them say, oh, I'm going to do more, I'm going to introduce a few more indicators, and then it doesn't become my problem or my leadership problem. Now you own this whole program, you own the outcome, you own the impact. And that's how we started our journey.
If I could just add on to that. So I agree completely with what James said, and it builds also, or I want to build a bit using that on the point I made earlier about the tight nexus between the people writing the reports and the people actually doing the work on the ground. I think one thing that's really important in helping people not feel like it's a chore and also helping them succeed in this is helping them understand why you are collecting this particular piece of data and not something else. So for example, right, say one of the pieces of data you might collect is the length of engagement, right, with any particular family, right? Now, that goes down to the people who are, if you're in a large organization, the people who are running it, and they don't know why this is the indicator you've chosen. But if there is that tight nexus, that regular feedback loop, and you're able to communicate why, what is it that we care about when it comes to the length of the engagement? What does that demonstrate for us? Because it can be interpreted many different ways, right? If you're looking for length of engagement because you want to show that, oh, you've actually managed to, occupy this family for a long time, given this, say, this elderly person a lot of time, attention, and care, like that in itself is one of the objectives of the program, then okay, that's why. So then the person actually doing the work knows it doesn't matter if the engagement is not entirely about the specific program we're running. If I also end up speaking to this elderly person for half an hour about what their daughter is doing or how their grandchildren are, that is also contributing to the success of this program because it's a certain kind of engagement, providing care, providing attention. You understand that. On the other hand, if you are measuring length of engagement because you want to see, how resource intensive is this? In order to deliver the messages you need to deliver, or in order to deliver the services you need to deliver, do you need 20 minutes? Do you need 40? Do you need 60? Have we right-sized the number of volunteers we have for the number of people in the community we need to serve? Then that's very different, right? Because when the person doing the work says, actually within the first 20 minutes, we were done doing the things I needed to do for the program, but the uncle wanted to talk about his grandchildren, and I was done for the day, so I decided to stay. Then they know that when they're recording that piece of data, they have the context to understand what you're actually looking for, and they know to put 20 minutes instead of 40. And that helps to make your collection of data also more accurate and more efficient. So that speaking the same language and understanding why you are collecting that piece of data rather than something else, very important. And I would also add that maybe there should be a receptivity to allowing those on the ground doing the work to suggest some useful indicators. Because you may be saying, okay, actually what we want to know is what is the ripple effect we're having, right, on the rest of this person's life. And so in your mind, you're like, oh, then, something like this might be useful indicator, something like this. But the person on the ground interacting with the people you're serving every single day, they might say, actually, the better thing to measure that would be this other indicator. And that, if that's a back and forth conversation, rather than directives going from the center of the organization to the ground, but instead having a back and forth conversation, I think it will make your impact measurement much more useful and accurate.
Thank you. It's all about communicating. So for my panelists up here, is it realistic for charities to measure as they go in the program the impact, or do they do it post? Or because sometimes I think there was a question that when is a good time to start measuring? Is it at the beginning of that program, starting, middle, end, or you pick up mic already, you answer first.
I was about to pick up mine and say, James have a great answer.
I was going to hand a mic to you.
I actually think that we need to think of impact measurement right through from the start. But again, it comes back to what is your theory of change of that particular program. I know I repeat myself many, many times. So we were just talking at the panel. I said that, we just want you to take away one thing. So if you want to take away one thing, just remember, whatever you do, you must have a very clear theory of change, and then everything else will fall in place, right? Not a magic formula, but sometimes it does. Because if you wait until the program ends, then you do an assessment of the program, chances are you're going to find that I wish I asked that question. Then you lose that opportunity to have a really good angle that you're looking for, right? But it's a learning process because sometimes we don't know what we don't know, right? So I think it's not a wasted opportunity. But now that you are starting, I would highly recommend that before you launch into any program or you create any program, you think about how do I know if this works? So you develop a whole theory of change that we believe in this, therefore we do this, and because we do this, we'll get that, right? So very simple theory of change formula. Then if we know that that's what we're looking for, then how do we know we've succeeded? Then you answer a few questions. Then you already have your indicator. And then you're going to say that, then how do I know whether did this work or not? Then you say, okay, maybe before the program I ask a few questions, after the program I ask a few questions, then I already got the answer lah. So it's a very logical way of building it, right? So if you can build as part, and I think this is to Sheila's point about having common language. If you build the idea of measurement as part of an organizational culture and the question you ask, then very naturally you will have that in mind, like, oh, how do I know if this is succeeding? Okay, then let's ask these questions now. Then later on, maybe we ask the same question again. Pre-post always works quite well. There are some tools that are entirely post. It's just depending on what tool you want to use. So I would say always start with the theory of change. That will go a long way in what you are planning to do in every single program.
Yeah, I think it's nicely summed up, right? So we are looking at a pre and post. Actually, in many of our programs these days, before we even start off, it needs to come with a theory of change and a logic model and the indicators that we're going to measure. And once the program is formalized, we're going to launch it, we will definitely collect a pre-assessment of the clients that we onboard onto the program. Because with that, we can measure after the program is completed or halfway through whether there's improvement. So yes, you need to do a maybe intermediate checkpoint, you need to do something about it, and then the post. Thank you.
Thank you. So now let's move on to methods and tools. James, for you, any success stories on method that you have used at Touch to measure impact that you can share with our charities here?
I think between the three of us, we kind of briefly covered, and I would say that the sector itself, to a large degree, have been using the theory of change and logic model. I think that's the starting point. Later on, as an organization, we started to want to find out whether we need to further tweak our programs, and therefore we have monitoring and evaluation framework. And I believe my team uses this thing called the RE-AIM, right? Reach, effectiveness, adoption, implementation, and maintenance. So it's another program itself. I'm not the best person to talk about it, but they use different frameworks to look at measurements so that they can present to leadership in terms of the outcome of the programs or impact, and what more do we need to do to better improve it, to scale it, or to sunset the program, okay? I think a lot of times when we look at evaluation, the biggest concern for many staff in charities is, what if this program doesn't work? Will I lose my job? Will we close the program? What happens to the beneficiaries? But and on the organization side, I think as a leadership team, we have to be very mindful. Number one, we are not here to abandon the beneficiaries, even if we have to close the program. Right? So we will look at alternative programs out there that perhaps may be better suited. Right? So we put them in those programs, and maybe we rechannel our resources to do something else. And I think that must be the basis of understanding. So in a sense, we want them to be assured that you're not going to lose your job, all right? So it's better that we be honest, we satisfy ourselves, than for funders to start hammering us along the way, right? And that we didn't make the mark and the money is not well used. So better to be honest and uncover the issues first than to do the program for a couple of years and actually there's no real change.
Yeah. If I can add to that. So I think also ideally, and this can be part of your discussion with your funder up front from the start. I mean, to go to Martin's point earlier about the kind of relationship you want to have with your funder and the kind of, and if your funder being the funder you wish you had, there also has to be space to evolve your theory of change. Right? So it is a theory, right? It's a hypothesis. You start out, you don't know what you don't know, as Martin said, and you go there and you give it a shot and you try something. And in some ways it will work, hopefully, and in other ways it won't. I think this thing about impact measurement is sometimes we are looking only for the wins because that's what we feel we need to communicate. But actually equally important, especially as you're exploring your theory of change and trying to condense it into something a little more informed is also understanding if there are negative impacts to what you're doing. And that's something that I think we don't really talk a lot about. But it is important because you might be trying to do something good and having unintended negative consequences. And it doesn't mean that you need to abandon your theory of change. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to sunset the program every single time, that you need to exit the beneficiaries every single time. It could just mean that you need to evolve what you're doing in order to address those unexpected consequences, and your theory of change actually gets stronger. And I think if you are with a funder who is committed for the outcome, they will appreciate that. Right? Especially if you're able to articulate it well. And measurement is really just the first step you need to take to be able to articulate something well. So I think with impact measurement, we don't always have to be anxious about measuring all the wins. If we are open and transparent about measuring where things have fallen short or where you've noticed, for example, so I don't know if this is the case, but just to imagine, right? Credit Counselling in Singapore, we do a lot of financial literacy training. Right? So that's the first step for everyone. You can come and learn about different types of debt. If you're in a certain type of debt, what are your options? How can you manage this and come out of it, right? An unintended consequence could be that people come for this, this training because they have credit card debt. And then they leave with the idea that they can ameliorate this by going to licensed money lenders, right? Because they've learned about that kind of debt, which they didn't know about before. They didn't know much about. I don't know. It could happen. It could even be in a minority of cases. So it might not really affect the huge benefit you're creating that much. But understanding that unintended negative outcome can help you improve your theory of change a lot more and make your program more targeted. Really goes to what Martin said at the start about, if it's working, why is it working? Augment that. If it's not working, why is it not working? And figure out how to evolve that. That curiosity about the impact you're having is important.
Do you mind if I share something that I have no answer to? So just don't judge me, okay? I'm just trying to. I'm really trying to figure this out, right? So, a classic, and many of you will know this as an example. In family violence situation, a large part of our goal as a funder, as government, as charities is for families to remain intact, right? So we do counseling, we do mediation, and so on and so forth. And to us, that's the outcome. Family stays together to a certain extent, right? And that is to safeguard the child as well, right? But when they save together, we give them, as part of counseling, to say, you know what, you just stay out of each other's way for a while. Maybe you sleep on the couch, you sleep in a room. It's part of the mediation process and so on. So while the outcome looks like the family is together, but it's actually not, you see. You get me? So the question I'm asking is, then what questions must I ask in order to solve or to find the right outcomes for a case like that, all right? So a question that I'm asking one of the FSC, we're just having a chat on this week. I said that, what if it's actually better for the child if the husband and wife are not together? Actually, divorce is a far better option for that child, right? Yeah. But in a country like ours, where we're highly conservative, we're highly family-oriented, that's not the outcome that any funder would want to fund, right? So, which is my point. Like, I'm going to share something. I have no answer. But that's the real struggle for us on the ground. What is it that we're after? So my only input would be that sometimes, beyond numbers and impact measurements, we really got to develop the sensing of our staff, our caseworkers on the ground, and really find a mechanism to listen to them, because they are probably the best people to tell us whether something works or doesn't work, beyond numbers and beyond indicators, because there are just certain things in our world that cannot be measured by numbers and by tools. And if we have that mental model that at the end of the day, lives are complex, society issues are complex, then we don't drill down to a set of indicators purely. We need that as an overarching thing, but allowing space for people to have stories that come up from the ground to inform us that sometimes while the numbers look good, the outcomes are actually terrible. I don't think we have answers for that. I think as funders, we're trying to figure that out. I think government is trying to figure it out. And my base point is, government cannot think of it, then it's beyond my pay grade.
Hey,
Try.
But I actually agree with Martin, because this particular complex case, increasingly there's more of it, it's very hard to say we put indicators, because at the end of the day, the social worker or the team that's managing the case may have to make decisions based on the family unit itself. Right? For this particular type of family, at where they are in this life stage, maybe it's better that divorce happens. And although we don't recommend that, but for some cases we have to stay together. But even staying together, what do you mean? Because it's not physically staying together, right? Is it about contact time? So it's not so straightforward to find. Actually, I don't envy his position, right? And I don't think I would dare to, at this point in time, put a proposal to you, because I don't think I can give you the set of indicators that you're even looking at.
There's no easy answers to this. It is a very thorny issue, and I think everyone here can resonate with how complex a lot of community issues have become, especially in modern times. Again, the thought that sprung to mind was creating the tightness of nexus, right, between the people doing the work and the people kind of talking about the work. And one practice that I think is very useful, if it's possible in your organization, is making sure that everyone has the chance to do some of the groundwork, and everyone has the chance to also do some of the reporting, or the HQ, or the central services type of work. And it might not be realistic, right? Because the people who sit in your offices might not have a social work background, but there are ways that they can volunteer with their own organization, or they can be the second person accompanying the caseworker. And similarly for your social workers, to give them opportunities to sit in a lot of HQ functions on a rotational basis, on an occasional basis, but to create that exposure both ways, because then that really creates a tighter feedback loop where you're able to surface difficult and complex issues like this. And we might not have a solution, but at least there are the people who speak to the funders, who know how the funders speak and how the funders think, and there are the people who speak to the families and know the family dynamics, and you can usually come up with something better together rather than apart.
So I have a question. Outcomes versus impact, the difference. James? You are shaking your head, so
So
I see you're gonna
outcomes
answer
are,
this.
as you know, short to medium term, impact long term, right? And when we look at, so for example, we use a program, say on mental health and coping. Let's say we're trying to help youths in terms of going through mental health challenges. So the short term, the short to medium term, or rather the outcomes, would look something like, have they acquired the skills? Are they confident enough to use these skills as a coping mechanism, right? And at the end of the day, that is, to us, is the outcomes. Outputs are really attendance taking, how many of them come, how many of them stay through, right, the whole program. Then the impact basically will look something like, okay, how has that changed our life in terms of sustained change, and then the ability to stand on their own feet and therefore help someone. And maybe the whole scene around, the youth scene, right? A lot of them are able to be more resilient, right? And be able to cope with some of the stresses in life. So I would kind of use that, just as an example. Otherwise, I'll be giving definitions, and you end up, you'll be trying to, you can get it from textbook.
You want to add anything? Yes.
Actually, I would say that you need one to achieve the other as well, right? So sometimes when talking about impact without talking about outcome is kind of putting the cart before the horse, because you need the outcomes to happen before you can even measure whether your outcomes have that long-term impact. So they're both important, I think.
Okay, I've been given the sign 5 minutes left. So, and there's a lot of questions coming in, which I am sure you can ask them directly after this. This session I would have given it 2 hours or something, but I want to know lessons learned, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So James, can you share a moment when impact measurement didn't go well? And what have you learned that you can share with us?
Yeah, I kind of spoke about that earlier on, right? But initially when we embarked on this process, obviously there were gaps, because we started many of the programs without the whole theory of change and logic model, and it was initially a bit depressing for some of the staff, because you don't expect some gaps, the bigger gaps, to show up in a big way. And I actually had to assure them that, look, we're not going to shut down the program, right? There's still a need. We just need to fine-tune or work on our theory of change logic model, look at our indicators, look at what we want to see finally in the change that we are planning to bring. Right? So I would say that, for leadership team, it is very important that you continue to encourage, even though the results were depressing. Continue to encourage, tell them that you're here to support this learning journey, right? And so that's important. I think for the staff, many of them, they are genuinely interested to do a good piece of work. Nobody comes in and just want to, cruise around, right? And people need to find purpose and find that what they do matters to the people on the ground, right? So if we can do that, right, have some patience. I know sometimes the board wants to see quick results, fast change, but that's the leadership's team to manage and all the expectation, right? So those are some of my learning points. I probably leave it to the two of them to share.
I will just add that when things don't go well, if you don't look at impact measurement from a punitive measure, then that's perfectly fine, because we learn, right? So if we see impact measurement as a learning tool, then I think that's good. So the way I help my team, it's not just for us, but it's also for the grantee partners as well, is that when you do your measurement and things don't go well, the one way of framing it, and this is a very practical thing, is to frame it as, now we have a baseline. It's the same issue, it's the same outcome, right? Then maybe our projection was maybe a bit over the top, a bit too aspirational, all right? But now I have a baseline. Then surely if we continue the next time, then let's use this baseline and see, have we improved the next time around? So it's just a very simple frame. But I think it goes a long way to help the morale of the staff. But sometimes we don't know what we don't know. We just don't get it right the first time, and it's perfectly okay. So, yeah.
Sheila?
I think for me, one learning experience has been coming to terms with the fact that you in your organization may care a lot about a certain aspect of what's going on in society or a certain ill that you're trying to remedy. Realizing that not everyone out there shares your point of view or believes that it is as important as you think it is. And that necessarily impacts how you communicate or how you need to communicate in order to get this issue to resonate with people for whom this is not an issue at all. So, I mean, for example, with credit counselling, right? We will talk to people sometimes who very frankly will say, why are you helping those who fall into debt? They're just reaping the consequences of their own choices, right? In the same way, why would you help a drug offender? They shouldn't have abused drugs to begin with, right? Why are you bothering to help this group when we have so many more objectively needy groups who, through no fault of their own, are in terrible circumstances? And that's not untrue too, right? That you should, obviously those groups need help. But why have we chosen to focus on this group? The ability to articulate that is difficult, but a fantastic learning experience, right? So if you are facing something like that in your organization where you are caring about a niche issue that maybe broader society, maybe the government, maybe big funders don't care about or don't think is as worthwhile, I encourage you to think about how to find a common denominator between what you care about and what they care about, perhaps by appealing to aspects of the social compact that everyone can agree on, and demonstrating how what you are doing links to that. So for example, the belief that everybody deserves a second chance because everybody makes mistakes and we should not be punished for our whole lives for them, right? Or perhaps the idea that you want to help people take responsibility for their mistakes and be able to come out of it and do better, which is something that we talk about at Credit Counselling, right? We're saying that actually we're not helping to forgive the debt of the people who come in. We're helping them learn how to pay their debt back in a way that doesn't bring them underwater and force them to declare bankruptcy and ruin their and their families' lives forever. They do repay their debt. We help them do it in a sustainable way, and we provide them with the tools and the skills so that in the future, maybe they don't fall into that debt again. So when you're able to talk about your impact in that way, resonating with someone who has a very different worldview from your own, I think that will help your organization succeed much more.
Okay, so on that note, maybe you want to keep in mind one takeaway because there's so many words floating around, right? Theory of change, clarity, talk the common language, storytelling, accountability. So I'll start with Martin because you're here. What is one thing that you would like everyone to walk away?
Listen to James. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Your question.
You're not listening to me.
Takeaway too.
No, but what is one thing? Because my theory, or at least my belief is, if all of you walked away with one thing, if the whole 1 hour you've listened to one thing, we have made an impact. So James, what is one thing you would...
Yes.
Oh, Martin! Sheila! Okay, Martin. Oh no!
Let me try an experiment. What do you think my one thing will be?
He's not James.
Huh? There we go.
There you go. So can you say it again? What is one thing Martin wants you to walk away with? Well done.
There we go.
James.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm not going to ask the same question. That will be copycat. But I just want to encourage when you go on this journey, the board, the management team, and the staff, do it together as one team, right? And learn together. And for all you know, you all will grow, right? And your relationship will strengthen. Everybody is all in. So it's not just the staff alone going on this journey.
Sheila?
I think for my takeaway is slightly different for different groups, right? For those of you in large organizations, I would say everything I've been saying about making sure the nexus between the people doing the work and the people talking about the work is very, very tight to the point where each of them has experience doing each other's work. I hope that will be one takeaway because I think it's really very, very powerful. And for those of you in small organizations, more niche interest areas, then it would be the point I just made earlier about try to find a way to communicate what you're doing to people who do not care about this issue at all and who actually think you should not be spending money in this area. If you can do that, you can do anything.
And my takeaway for you is, I think all of you have to remember that impact is not about perfection. Okay, we are not here. If we are here to make a perfect world, right, we'll be out of jobs, right? But it's not about perfection. It's about learning. It's about listening. And it's about staying true to the purpose. And what our three panelists have said, from the top down, you have to communicate your single language. And that's very important. Besides the theory of change, and that could be a single language. So on behalf of everyone, can we please put our hands together for an amazing panel? And one of the things I would like everyone to walk away with is to keep asking yourself, are you making a difference? And if you are, very good. If you're not, you're going to get there. So thank you very much, everybody, for spending your afternoon with us.